Well, London's Mayor Sadiq Khan has admitted he is worried about a surge in Tory votes in next month's general election. The Prime Minister, Theresa May, was campaigning in the capital today alongside what she called her team of London candidates. She's targeting victory in a host of Labour-held constituencies, something the Mayor says he's keen to prevent, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Every vote for me and my team, every vote for me and my team, for me and my team is a vote.
Mrs May's new mantra, me and my team, could soon be as familiar to voters as that other tried and tested slogan, strong and stable. Today, the Prime Minister was preaching to the converted, an audience of Conservative candidates fighting seats in London and the South East. Mrs May said Londoners had a choice.
That is whether they want strong and stable leadership in the national interest, under me and my team, strengthening our hand in the negotiating process for Brexit, ensuring we get the best possible deal for Britain out of leaving the European Union, the best possible deal for people here in London, or a coalition of chaos led by Jeremy Corbyn. It's a very clear choice.
Shortly after she called the election, Mrs May made an early visit to a factory in Enfield. Enfield North is high on the Conservative target list. Then last week she was in Brentford. Brentford and Isleworth is also a Labour marginal the Tories have their sights on. Today it was swing voters of another Labour-held constituency, Harrow East, who were being courted.
If I do vote, it probably be Conservatives. I've never voted for Conservatives in my life, but I don't believe Jeremy Corbyn's the man, to be honest with you.
I think personally Brexit is, a more pressing issue, and the effect that that's going to have on the economy. I think that's, something that we should be focusing on.
I'm going to go Labour, just because, it might be a bit rosy what they're hoping for, but at least they do want to put more money into the NHS, raise wages for doctors.
The Prime Minister warned her candidates to take nothing for granted. Whatever the polls say, Labour's support in London has been rock solid in recent years. Just 12 months ago, Labour looked unassailable in London after Sadiq Khan's convincing victory in the race for City Hall. The following month, Londoners voted overwhelmingly to stay in the EU. How worried are you that the tide has turned in London?
Well, I've been out campaigning across London and I've got a saying, which is there is no such thing as a safe seat. What we can't allow to happen is for the Conservative Prime Minister to win an even bigger majority, which could lead to a bad, extreme, hard Brexit deal with the EU.
Are you worried, though, that there are seats that shouldn't be vulnerable that are?
Of course I'm worried when I look at the polls. Of course I'm worried when I look at the results last Thursday across the country.
There was no mistaking the new Tory branding today. In all but name, this is now Team May.
And Simon, elsewhere on the campaign trail, Vince Cable and the Lib Dems seem to be advocating some tactical voting among their supporters here in London.
Yes, Sir Vince is one of those Lib Dem grandees who lost their seats at the last election and now rather unexpectedly finds themselves making or attempting a political comeback. And he's been secretly recorded at a meeting, apparently suggesting Lib Dem voters in one West London constituency should consider backing the Labour candidate. That constituency is Ealing Central and Acton, where Labour's Rupert Huck had a majority at the last election of 274.
I'll just get one example. There's Rupert Huck, who's the candidate in Ealing, I think. We talked for a couple of hours, and it was very clear that on almost every issue, our views were almost identical. And so I would find it difficult to vote against something like that.
We might think, what's the problem? That's what tactical voting is all about. But the problem for Sir Vince is that in this case, in that particular constituency, his own party has its own candidate, John Ball. And his party leader, Tim Farron, is trying to convince voters that they should make the Lib Dems the official opposition. Well, in response to Sir Vince's comments, the Lib Dems have issued a statement saying clearly that the official Lib Dem line is vote Lib Dem, not vote Labour.
All right, Simon Harris, thank you. Kate Hoey, the Labour candidate for Vauxhall, has been accused of airbrushing out one of her opponents after tweeting a doctored picture from an event in Lambeth. The Lib Dem candidate appears to have been removed from the photo entirely. Well, our political correspondent Simon Harris is in Kennington this evening. Simon, how did this come to light?
Well, this is part of the Vauxhall constituency where there's quite a battle going on between Labour and the Liberal Democrats. Yesterday, local primary school children here invited politicians to come to this church to sign a pledge to introduce a new Clean Air Act. The Liberal Democrat candidate for Vauxhall, George Turner, can clearly be seen in pictures posted on Twitter. He's standing on the right with the beard and the big yellow rosette. But when his main Labour rival, Kate Hoey, posted her own pictures on Twitter, Mr Turner was nowhere to be seen. However, if you look closely, there is mysteriously an extra set of legs between the children standing at the front. Mr Turner recognised them as his legs, but where was his head and where was his body? Well, it turns out that Miss Hoey had been busy with the airbrush, or at least someone in her team had. Not, it seems, because she wanted her opponent to vanish, much as she might like him to, but because, she told me, she objected to the fact that he was wearing a yellow rosette at an event that was supposed to be non-party political. Well, as you can imagine, there has been a good deal of comment about this on social media.
Is renationalisation the answer to London's railway crisis? Well, Labour certainly thinks so, and it's one of the standout policies of the party's leaked draft manifesto that emerged today. Fares would be frozen and guards put back on driver-only trains. That's, of course, the key issue at the heart of the Southern Rail dispute, so it's sure to hit home with frustrated commuters. But who will fund a nationalised railway, and will it actually work for London? Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
Jeremy Corbyn seemed eager to avoid the cameras after the embarrassing leak of his manifesto, but his driver was unable to avoid one cameraman, literally. While a paramedic treated the cameraman, Mr Corbyn and Labour bigwigs signed off the manifesto.
We'll present this manifesto to the British people in the next few days. Our manifesto will be an offer, and we believe the policies in it are very popular.
The renationalisation of the rail network is one of the most radical proposals, and it includes a promise to reinstate guards on all passenger trains. That is at the heart of the bitter and long-running Southern dispute, where the axing of conductors has led to strikes and misery for commuters.
With the driver operating the doors, it means the train can still run if that second person, for some reason, sickness or lateness, doesn't turn up.
The draft manifesto made no mention of how much it would all cost, saying the renationalisation would happen in stages as current franchises expired. The takeover of private sector industry by the state went out of fashion in the 1970s, and the last time the railways were forced into public ownership was 1948. The train companies condemned Labour's plan as a return to the past, an era of shabby, clapped-out and infrequent trains. But Labour isn't the only party keen to renationalise.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, so we're delighted that obviously someone in the Labour Party office has been flicking through our 2015 general election manifesto and picked out many of our policies, like bringing rail back into public ownership.
Historically, when the railways were run by British Rail, every time the government had less money available, they would simply restrict the amount of investment going into the rail service.
But one Labour-supporting rail expert had a different perspective on the past.
British Rail actually ran a very good service, had very strong commercial instincts, boosted the numbers on the railway, created a wonderful brand, Intercity, that is still famous today, and there's no reason why a new state company couldn't do the same.
Labour's manifesto would also give London's mayor the control of suburban services he so wants. Simon Harris, ITV News, Victoria.